Failing a STEP exam is terrifying, but not having a recovery strategy is even worse. Meet Govind, an IM resident who failed Step 3 and is now aiming for a GI fellowship, one of the most competitive paths in medicine. In this live coaching session, we break down what actually matters after a step failure, how to build a retake plan that works, and how to turn a red flag into a footnote. If a step failure is on your record or you're worried about matching with one, this is your roadmap. In general, my impression, having talked to fellowship directors, because I actually wanted to do IM for a long time, because my original plan was to do oncology, and I only discovered anesthesia kind of like literally at the 11th hour. So I spent a lot of time talking to IM program directors, specifically in fellowship when I was at Stanford. My general impression is that they don't care. Like, they don't even know what a passing score is for Step 3. So if you failed, they might care, but my general impression is that they don't care so much. They probably would care more about your IM, sort of like your IM, which, like will correlate somewhat with Step 3 because there's a lot of overlap between internal medicine and the USMLEs. But I don't think it necessarily means that you're out of the running from a USMLE standpoint. That said, the kind of program that has spots open to SOAP for internal medicine is also not the kind of program that is going to traditionally send lots of people to competitive fellowships. So that to me is probably going to be your bigger challenge.
Yeah, and we just graduated our first class last year.
So it's
like a new program, and then they're expanding as we speak. They got affiliated with MCG now, all of those things. My thing was I knew I was going for an uphill battle. I was trying to find a hepatology fellowship, like a non-HGME hepatology fellowship first, where they also do research, and they were saying that you could try to, any of these places, not competitive. It would be like free labor, basically. But just make contacts there, try to do research, and try to get in. But is that viable? I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. I would agree. I mean, I think that in general, one of the reasons why going to an academic center is better is because you're a known quantity. Because when you're a fellows, like, it's different from residency. Residency, it's like you can kind of make mistakes, like whatever. But fellow, I think the expectations are much more that you know what you're doing. And so, and obviously some people don't come in knowing very much of what they're doing, but like there's a lot of people that do, and that's kind of what they're looking for. And so if you're a known quantity, then like if you know the system, because I mean, GI fellowships are 3 years, right? But like 1 or maybe even 2 of those are research.
Oh, right? Okay. I didn't know that. Okay.
I'm pretty sure. No, I mean, like, no, I'm going off of my experience at MGH and at Stanford, but I know at Stanford.
That another pathway for me was just, I wasted years trying to do ortho, just get on with my life, get a job, try to do like hospitalist, and then do clinic on my weeks off, try to do a business entrepreneurial type of thing, and just start earning money. But I don't know if it's better to be specialized and then you'll make up that salary difference afterward or not.
Yeah, it's kind of like I mean, if you think about it from just a monetary standpoint, I mean, GI can make like double, right? I mean, it's like it's not a small difference. That's why GI, onc, cardiology are so competitive. Is because they're like, you can double in hospital salary without them sitting afterwards. Yeah, for an extra 3 years of training. I mean, the sad thing is that if you had scored better, you probably would have gotten into ortho.
Yeah, if I'd found you guys, I think.
Like if you, I mean, like because you had, it sounds like everything else, right? Like you had the connections, you had the research, you just didn't have the scores.
No.
And so it sounds like you got filtered out. Like, I mean, I get it. I totally get like being scarred by that experience. I do think that it is important to know that the rules are different for fellowship, particularly for internal medicine fellowships, because arguably you could say a GI fellowship is maybe not quite as competitive as orthopedic surgery residency, but if you look at the numbers, they're not that far off. Pass rate pretty similar for like cardiac, GI, onc, like fellowship as it is for like ortho and neurosurgery term residency.
Right.
And pretty similar amount of people get rejected. So what's different though is that like it always matters like where you come from, what school you went to, your connections, your research, and your scores. It's just that like they matter in different proportions for fellowship than they do for IM or for for residency. And so, I would, in my experience, those things, the connections, the research, the clinical stuff matters more for fellowship than it does for residency.
Mhm.
Because residency, they do care more about your scores. Like for step 3, now I know the context. You definitely don't want to fail again, but as long as you have a passing score. I mean, in an ideal world, again, I would talk to a fellowship director if you
Okay.
can. Like go to the conference, talk to some fellowship directors, just be honest with them. Say, hey, like I failed my step 3. How much do you care about that? In an ideal world, what you can do though is you can say, I failed, but I also scored a 240 on my retake. I just had a bad day. Like it was all of these things. Obviously, these are not excuses, but like to show you what I really can do, like I was 3 standard deviations above passing, because they probably know what the passing score is. Just because the question that they're going to have, when I talk to program directors, the question that they always have when people fail is like, are you going to fail when you're in my program?
Exactly.
Right? Because like they've all had, those nightmare cases where it's like you couldn't pass and therefore it hurt their accreditation, it hurt their so like residency program directors, it's like I don't think anyone really believes that step 2 is a great predictor of how good of a doctor you're going to be, but they still care about it because like it's a good predictor of how well you're going to do on your board exams when you're a resident.
Right.
It's also a good, it's like, yeah, like if you fail,
That's
they've
sweet.
got concerns about.
Yeah.
So, to answer your direct question, if you're my favorite cousin, I would say, in general, if you could snap your fingers and everything you learned, you could learn it better, and you could make sure that you never forgot it, and you could make sure that you didn't get stuck between 2 answer choices, and you could do, like not miss questions on things that you know. First of all, when would you want to snap your fingers? And second of all, like how long would you want to wait after snapping your fingers until you took your test? If you're serious about maximizing your scores, join our 14-day mini course now. We'll send you 14 high-yield videos that break down the exact concepts and test strategies our students use for 260 plus scores. Click the link in the description below now to get instant access.
If I snap my finger, I mean, ideally, I'd want to get it over with as soon as possible because I want to start actually. I hate studying for exams. When I learn for the sake of learning, and that's when I learn the best. And I want to start doing that just to be an overall good physician. And I think I need that for boards, like I am boards,
Yeah.
So
it's up to you. I mean, to be honest, like if you hate studying, it actually pushes me to say that you should probably wait until to take your test. Because like that kind of pain, like, because it means that you're not going to want to study otherwise.
Yeah.
The like threat of taking your test has to be stronger than like your dislike of studying. Right. So like what I would recommend, my general recommendation is you should never take your test so soon that it's going to make you cut corners.
Okay.
So like the biggest mistake I see people make is they're like, oh, okay, well, I want to take my test in 2 weeks, but then they don't learn it well. They don't, make good Anki cards. They don't do their cards. They don't practice question interpretation. They're just like doing questions just to check the box of like, oh, I did like a lot of questions today. Those students always do worse than they wanted to. And it always takes them like 5 times as long as they originally anticipated because they keep pushing back their test by like 4-week increments or 8-week increments. And it's never enough time. And they always keep cutting corners and then they feel even more stressed. And like, so you don't want to do that. On the flip side, you also don't want to be that person that's like, well, I'm going to take my test in a year because then there's like no fear or, something to like move you. So then, because then like when you're like, okay, well, I got to study, or your friend's like, hey, let's go out and get drinks. Yeah. It's like, there's nothing that you have that's going to be like, no, man, I got to buckle down and study.
Yeah.
Right. You want to find that happy medium where it's like it's far enough away that you don't cut corners. Mm-hmm. But it's also not so far away that you can't be like where you feel like complete like relief. Oh no, it doesn't matter. Yeah. So because what you would love is the great news is you're in an internal medicine residency, which means that when you study for, I don't know that they're going to care so much about step 3, but I do think that they probably will care about your ITE. Okay. So what you want is you want to study in such a way, like, because if you study well for this, it will make your ITE studying much easier, right? Because like there's so much overlap. Because like we help people study for the ABIM, and like they're.
Oh really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, okay. It's people that study for the ABIM. It's like the same stuff. It's harder. it's definitely harder. Like it's like beyond my level of knowledge for a lot of those
Okay.
things. But the process of how you break it down, the process of like what you like, it's still the same process.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So so if you study well for step three, it will help you. Like, but again, you got to learn to make sure that you make good cards, do your cards, like all of those things become really, really important.
Okay.
So
So,
that's what I would, yeah.
so suppose year one, year two ITs just horrible down the drain. Like let's say 20th percentile, 40th percentile, something like that. If I'm not applying next year to residency, because if I'm applying next year, they're going to look at year two. But if I'm applying after hepatology or after a year of research, they're probably looking at year three IT or my ABIM, right?
Would you do hepatology, but you do hepatology after your PGY3, right? After you're done with residency.
After I'm done with residency. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, especially if you can get board certified, right? Like, then they won't care what those scores are.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
they care about these things pragmatically. They don't care about it as like oh, is he smart or not? They care about it as like
Will he
are you gonna
pass?
have,
Yeah.
yeah, you're gonna not become board certified in, hepatology or GI or whatever, right? Like it's just a pragmatic. If you fail this test, you're probably not going to pass this test.
Okay. Hepatology, I can't get board certified because it's non-ACGME unless you
I
go
see.
the GI first pathway. But
Yeah,
I'd be
but
board certified in IM by that point.
yeah, but you would have board certification in IM, so that's kind of the key. So I would like, I don't like, I would, trust but verify, right? Is like
Okay.
what they would always say at Stanford, right? So trust your mentor, but verify it. Like go to the conference, talk to like fellowship directors, be upfront with them because they're going to see your application no matter what. So just say like, hey, look, this is the situation. I failed step three. Like I have taken it since then, right? So I probably would, right? Because when you have those conversations, you want to say, hey, I failed this, but I got a
I
240.
did this. I'm taking a year out off and doing research.
Exactly.
Okay.
My plan was to do a hepatology fellowship. I want to come in like and just really crush it when I come into fellowship. What are your thoughts about that as a plan? But it will help you if you've got a red flag, you want to do it. You want to do as well as you can. So if you were my favorite cousin, I would say like if there's nothing that forces you to take it sooner, and especially if you don't like studying for tests, then I would wait to take it perversely because it's going to force you to actually like study more.
Right.
So let's make sure that that is dealt with. But like you got to study, you got to start now. You got to study, like you got to hit it hard, and you got to like keep building that knowledge over time. Because if everything you learn can get to at least 80%, you never forget it, and then you can learn how to apply it. Then it's hard not to imagine that your step two score wouldn't be substantially better, and that your IM or your ABIM, like your ITEs, like those things wouldn't be better. And then it just becomes a footnote in the conversation of like, hey, like I totally dropped the ball. Like I didn't check my ID expiration date. Crazy. It's like I didn't study for 5 weeks and then I failed by 5 points. But look at this now.
Yeah.
Then they're like, oh, okay, fine. Like it doesn't matter, right? Because then they will know you because that's why you do a hepatology fellowship, right? Is that sounds like when they know you, they like you, and so that's great. We've known people like that.
Yeah.
They just in those situations, you just have to make sure that you get in the door, right? So rotate, do research, whatever it is to get yourself in the door, and then once they love you, then it's like then they'll overlook those other things.
Okay.
But that's not an uncommon thing. So I don't think it's bad advice. I would just trust but verify. Just check with fellowship directors. Just be like,
I checked with our intensivist also. He said the same. He said you just basically need to, and he was straight up. He said you need to erase this Archibald off your thing, and to do that, you need to do hepatology at like Baylor, Harvard, like one of these places that you can attach your name to. So then they'll take you in.
Yeah, they care a lot about pedigree.
Yeah,
I've never heard pedigree used so much until I went to Stanford and then MGH. But then I heard it all the time.
Really?
So
Okay.
It matters. So
yeah, no, that makes sense. So like the last thing is, I guess my PD wants me to take it in. Like they're trying to pressure me to take it as soon as possible again, which is what happened the first time. So take it in January, I guess.
Take it later. Like if you can, again, like don't slack, but like take it when you're ready. Take it when you can, like take it when you can crush it.
Okay.
And then
the only thing is during inpatient that because I have ICU, I have outpatient, then I have ICU, then I have inpatient, then I have infectious disease. Infectious disease, I'll have around 2 to 3 weeks of just grind time where I can study 7 hours a day.
Maybe do it during then. Maybe do it during ID.
But then don't. So during inpatient, I guess I'm gonna go downward because
I don't think so. I would change that mindset. So it's like at a minimum, if you do your cards, you won't forget the stuff that you've learned. So make sure that you make good cards and you do those cards.
Okay.
That's the key. So follow the program, because if you do it right, you shouldn't go down.
Okay.
You should only maintain. At worst, you should maintain. And
Okay.
ideally, you do a little bit every day so that you're still growing.
Okay.
Sounds good?
Yeah. Okay.
Hi, Govind. Very nice to meet you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, take care. A recovery plan means nothing without the right study system. This next video breaks down how to use UWorld to make every block count. Click here to watch the UWorld Complete Guide.